TechMac TV. My name is Nicole Madziwa.
And I am Marvelous Chibagiri, and this program is brought to you courtesy of TechMac TV.
And now for the news headlines from the news day. Government leans towards SA rand.
From the Herald, extreme temperatures till Thursday.
Still on the same paper, 100,000 passports on press.
NAM adds voice to sanctions renewal call.
Moving on to the daily news, ED Zanu Pf caught Mujuru.
Still on the daily news, bank cards crime soars.
Those were the news headlines, and now for the news in detail. I'll give this one to you.
So the first story that we have is from the Newsday, which reads, Government leans towards SA rand. And the story reads,
So we're likely to start using the rand?
Well, being the girl from Bulawayo, I'm not shocked. I won't be surprised because people in Bulawayo adopt to the pula and the rand also. So maybe you are likely to use the rand. Let us give you the story. The government is leaning towards pegging the Zimbabwe dollar currency to the South African rand, with Finance Minister Mthuli Ncube saying this will make the local currency more competitive in the region. Ncube made the disclosure to Newsday on the sidelines of the Anti-sanctions march at the National Sports Stadium on Friday, while responding to a question on whether the loss of confidence in the Zimbabwean economy was behind skyrocketing prices. And so we're not really adopting the rand. But he is claiming that as of now, our Zimbabwean dollar is trading at 1:1 with the South African rand. So if the Zimbabwean dollar is trading 1:1 with the South African rand, which is trading at 1:14 with the US dollar, so we're saying $1 is equal to 14 point.
Something like that.
Well, that's what's on the Blake Street, but that's not the interbank rate.
No, it's not. Not even close.
But there you have it. We're not really what me and Nicole thought when we read the headline. We thought we were adopting the SA rand, but that's not it. And please don't quote me, but Minister Mthuli said the Zim dollar, the bond to the South African rand is 1:1. Guess we're back to the 1:1 days.
Of course. On the Herald, moving on to the Herald, please can I have the headline? So the headline from the Herald reads, Extreme temperatures till Thursday. Zimbabwe is expected to continue experiencing extreme temperatures with a high probability of a heat wave to last until Thursday. Initially, the high temperatures were expected to last until yesterday. In a statement yesterday, the SADA Climate Services Center said the region will continue experiencing high temperatures in the central parts. So, guys, the heat wave is going to be there till Thursday, and we don't know if it's gonna
and on Thursday. But well, the focus is also promising thunderstorms and some rain a bit of next week. So please keep hydrated, carry your sunscreen. I know many black people think we don't necessarily need sunscreen, but trust me, you do. So if you can afford it and if you have it, please carry that sunscreen, carry that water bottle, and even just like your juice so that you can keep hydrated, you have fluids in your body. Nicole still has to maintain this complexion, guys. Like, I can't view any different from this. So please keep hydrated and keep checking the weather focus when you have data so that you know what to expect. Carry that umbrella. So moving on, and we still own the Herald, it says 100,000 passports on press. Government is moving to clear the passport backlog by producing 100,000 copies by December, following the delivery of paper and other consumables, while facilities being put in place for people in the diaspora to apply for the traveling document from their bases. The move is expected to considerably reduce the backlog of over 300,000 passports. Under a cross-border outreach program, birth certificates and national identity documents will be issued to Zimbabweans living in the diaspora. And this was said whilst at a press conference at the Mukwati building late afternoon in the capital yesterday. So we might be part of the 100,000 who are likely to get their passports processed by the government. But like we've said last week when we read the story, help me understand how a country like our own, which has about between 14 to 16 billion in population, do not have the consumables and everything they need for identity documents. How? Yet I'm even paying for the identity documents.
Exactly. Well, that's a story for another day.
It's a rant for another day.
Of course. So I'm still on the same paper. NAM adds voice to sanctions removal call. And that story reads: Non-aligned movement, NAM member states have joined the Southern African Development Community, SADC, and the African Union in calling for the immediate and unconditional renewal of illegal sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe by the United States and the European Union. NAM, which is headquartered in Jakarta, Indonesia, is the second largest organization after the United Nations, with 120 member states from the developing world, 17 observer countries, and 10 observer organizations. Speaking during the 18th summit of the government of NAM held in Baku, Zimbabwe's permanent representative to the UN Ambassador Frederick Shawa said meaningful deliberations on issues related to the removal of sanctions on Zimbabwe were topical at the summit. So NAM joins the SADC also in advocating for the removal of illegal sanctions, according to the Herald.
Well, we'll see if NAM adding its voice to the sanctions removal will help have the sanctions removed, like we read yesterday. EU and the US are saying they were not moved by the anti-sanctions march, which was held in the capital and also all over the country and in some other countries. And moving on to the daily news, the headline reads: ED Zanu Pf caught Mujuru as pressure. Sorry about that. I'll get into the story. It is emerged that President Emmerson Mnangagwa's close confidants have been meeting and exchanging notes with some of the leading lights of Zanu Pf's Vanquished Gamma Talks and Generation 40 factions over the past few months, the Daily News can reveal. This comes as both the ruling party and this government are battling to deal with the country's deepening political and economic crisis, which is stirring rising citizen unrest, as well as the increasingly strident criticism they're receiving from the disappointed Western powers over Zimbabwe's human rights credentials. So Mnangagwa and his closest sources are being said to be in talks with Comrade Joyce Teurairo Pamujuru. I don't know what it is exactly that they're planning to do, but well, that's the word from the Daily News.
Do you still remember the days where Gamma Talks actually trended quite?
And Mujuru and Grace were in the newspaper for like every single day in like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the news day, 100,000 to get passports by year end, says government. So that's a story that we also read from the Herald. So we're not going to get into it because it's still the same story. Okay, so still on the news day, ED 6 million anti-sanctions march riles doctors. Okay, so now it's 6 million. Remember when we
before the march we read, they were saying they needed 4 million.
Yeah,
was the money that they needed for the anti-sanctions march.
So here, okay, so let's just hear what the story is saying in detail. Striking doctors have accused the government of being insincere and selfish after allegedly blowing over 6 million in funding in anti-sanctions march and feeding the supposed protesters with expensive chicken and chips meals while failing to pay doctors. Doctors who spoke to Newsday on condition they were not named said the anti-sanctions march held on Friday showed beyond doubt that there was a leadership failure by a group of people who were not concerned about people. And I quote, "The government saw it fit to provide fuel for free buses, 2-piece fast food chickens now selling at around $40 each, free t-shirts, music, a football match, and just to march against sanctions which they know will not be removed by marching, instead of using that money to equip hospitals and get doctors back to work, said one of the doctors.
So the doctors are not amused at all.
They are not.
But okay, I'm not going to comment on this one. But I'm in my head. I'm just thinking, $6 million
Yeah.
for a march.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Allegedly, okay. Outcry over exorbitant electricity charges. Consumers are angry over the Zimbabwe Electricity Supply Authority billing amid fears that the power utility is charging more than what is being used on the prepaid meter system. Since the Zimbabwe Electricity Transmission and Distribution Companies, that ETDC, hiked electricity tariffs by 320%, the commodity's lifespan has shortened, consumers say. Despite the increase, Zimbabwe is already enduring long hours of electricity shortages, up to 18 hours a day, crippling households and industrial operations. So many consumers have been, well, this has been trending also on Twitter, and even some people that I know have been complaining that what used to be $20 now is not the same anymore, because your $20 will not last you any longer. So I don't know where we're headed to, and I don't know if ZESA is going to turn a listening eye to the plight of their consumers. We're simply saying that the charges are exorbitant, but also the electricity will not last you long.
Of course. And you have people joking around saying, you know what, we'd rather have load shedding because we actually can't afford electricity.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, moving on. Poverty threshold levels increased by 200% in 6 months. And that story reads, latest data released by Zemstat shows that poverty threshold levels for a family of 5 increased to $883 in September from $725.3 in August. Of course, these are Zim dollars. In gross terms, the movement represents a 22% month-on-month gain, which compares to a rise of 14% between July and August. So, according to Zimstat, a family as of today requires 883 Zim dollars to purchase their basic goods. But then for how long will that last you?
True.
Is the question.
Because Mazoa is $45 for the school kids. 2 liters of cooking oil is ranging between $50 to $53. Flour is ranging between $40 to $48. Salt is ranging between $18 to $23. So you can do the math. Meal is ranging between $69 to $75 a 10 kg of maize meal.
Of course.
Rice, should we go there?
Nah. I think we're good. Yeah. So
because I can give you the prices, guys, but Nicole said I shouldn't go there. But I'm just saying, do the math for yourselves for a family of 5. Zipco expands Combi franchise, and this is from the Herald. The Zimbabwe United Passenger Company, Zipco, has mobilized nearly 300 combis to service suburban routes across the country, a development that has resulted in affordable fares for commuters. Government extended the Zipco franchise to urban commuter omnibus operators across the country's cities, where people are charged $2 for a trip that is packed at about 5 by commuter operators. In an interview yesterday, Zipco acting chief executive Mr. Evaristo Madango said 280 combis had been mobilized and were operational across the country. So, but you know what? I'm liking how they have to put the numbers in and say 280 combis. But I'm saying, what is 280 combis against a population of between 14 to 16 million?
true.
What is 280 combis in Harare alone?
In Harare alone.
But anyway, well, the Zipco company are happy with the with the development, but I think more still needs to be done. Instead of increasing those commas, how about you just ensure that fuel is just at a normal price, and then the commas are just also operating, giving the passengers cheaper bus fee.
Of course. Actually, it's a pretty good idea.
Like, we're not going anywhere because these guys are even getting subsidies.
Exactly.
For
that's the
being
challenge.
Exactly. And where do you think the money is coming from? Obviously from the taxpayer.
Yeah, it can't be sustainable. Anyway, still on the Herald, Chassis proposes 30-year sentence for ZESA vandals. Energy and Power Development Minister Fortune Chassis has proposed a 30-year mandatory prison sentence for vandalizing ZESA infrastructure. This comes after the power utility has suffered losses amounting to $40 million through the vandalism of transformers. In a recent interview with the Herald on the sidelines of the Energy Innovation Summit in the capital, Minister Chassis said stealing power cables was an act of sabotage against the country and the law should severely punish those found guilty.
30 years.
Yes, mandatory prison sentence.
For vandalism.
For vandalism.
I wish people would be so vocal about this when it comes to other issues, but then I'm going to appear to be the feminist, and I don't want that. So we'll continue. And here's another story that has been trending since late afternoon and the early hours of the evening yesterday. About the story is running from the Herald, and it reads: Herald appoints acting editor. The Zim Papers Group has appointed former Herald editor William Chikoto as interim editor of the flagship daily with immediate effect following the departure of Tishawan Zindoga. Zindoga has been acting editor since the beginning of the year. Chikoto edited the Herald from 2009 to 2012 before being appointed editorial executive. In that position, Chikoto was in charge of convergence of content across all Zim Papers platforms, newspapers, online, and radio. He was also responsible for training journalists to write across the three platforms and overseeing the group's content strategy. So, this is not coming from Nicole, or me, or Technomag, or TechMag TV, but the word from the grapevine is saying, you know what, this was a political move. But we don't know. And Zenzele went on to tweet and he said, please remind this guy that when he wrote a story in March, the story that the Herald ran in March was rather malicious and also had some facts not right. So Zenzele is saying, in your face, and Karma knows everyone's address. There he went on to Twitter to talk about the development, and he even started his tweet with laughing emojis.
You can also check what Mayor Justice Wajirajena also tweeted with regards to that issue, of course, when he was giving his own perspective on why the deputy editor had to be sacked.
And Harold is saying he departed.
Yeah, but
I ain't.
Yeah.
And this.
There's a difference.
We're just reading you what we have in our papers. We're not going to get anything on.
Of course. So still on the same paper, 600 megawatt Wange project on course. Zimbabwe Power Company ZPC is on course to complete the Wange expansion project by January 2022 with progress currently at 23.2%. This is contained in the company's third quarter update released yesterday. And I quote, despite the challenges being faced, the ZPC has been embarking on several efforts to increase power generation, and we are currently working on Wange expansion project, which shall provide the nation with an additional 600 megawatt come January 2022, said the firm. Okay, so 600 megawatt. Okay, but it's still on 23.2%. So it's probably by January 22 it will be finished. We hope that ZPC will stand by their words.
A very good morning to Henry Yango, who's saying live this beautiful Tuesday evening from my end. Thank you very much for tuning in, Henry. A very good evening to you. And Emmanuel, you're going to sing good morning, ladies. Good morning. Hi, Emmanuel. How are you doing? And he's saying chassis is not a judge. And just regarding to the story of the 30-year mandatory sentence that is to be given to people who will be vandalizing some property. And he's saying if they connect electricity, who steals? So thank you very much for your comments. So please keep the comments coming as we will be reading you the headlines and the stories. Sanctions to blame for outdated ICT infrastructure. The country requires robust state-of-the-art infrastructure for ICTs to be competitive in line with the global trends, information communication technology and courier services, Minister Kazembe has said. In an interview with the Herald last week, Minister Kazembe said there was need for infrastructure development in the ICT sector, and I quote, "In order for us to catch up, we have to make sure that we do have the infrastructure in place," he said. To deploy that infrastructure, we need foreign currency. As long as we have the sanctions and in brackets imposed by the United States and European in place, there's no way we can earn the required foreign currency. So just to those who are wondering the effect of the sanctions, according to Honorable Kazembe, the sanctions are the reason why we're lagging behind when it comes to ICT infrastructure in Zimbabwe.
I'm sure we're not going to comment on that because the sanctions issue is a little bit, it requires a certain degree of understanding. We understand. So from us, we're not going to say anything on that. Moving on, let Zim chart its own destiny, Matutu tells the United States. And the story there reads, Zanu Pf Deputy Secretary for Youth Affairs, Comrade Louis Matutu, has called on the United States to leave Zimbabwe alone and allow the country to make mistakes or succeed without interference. In an interview with the Herald, Comrade Matutu said sanctions must be viewed from an economic point of view, as the country cannot grow or stabilize its economy without access to lines of credit or financial support. And I quote, "The Americans must leave us alone and allow us to enjoy our independence and sovereignty and to make our own mistakes and successes without their interference," he said. So that is Comrade Matutu speaking, of course, on the sanctions, saying that let Zimbabwe fail or let Zimbabwe succeed without anyone's interference.
And government to blame for anti-sanctions March flop. This is running from the Daily News. Zanu Pf has blamed the government for the poor turnout at the March hyped anti-sanctions demonstration at the National Sports Stadium last Friday. In the run-up to the march, President Emmerson Mnangagwa declared the day a national holiday in a bid to lure a huge crowd to the event held as part of efforts to push the United States and the West to remove sanctions imposed about almost 2 decades ago. Zanu Pf political commissar Victor Matemadanda yesterday said the event was a state function and as such the government should take the blame for the poor turnout. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah.
Matemadanda said the event was a state function.
Yeah.
And as such the government should take the blame for the poor turnout.
I learned something today.
Okay.
Zanu Pf is not the government. The government is not Zanu Pf. That's what Matemadanda is saying.
And Emmanuel is saying bad law-based kiki. He's also saying Matutu doesn't realize the effects of corruption are happening even now. So it's not really the sanctions. Hospital family in dispute over deaths. The case involving the death of Sharon Munyombo, a woman who died together with her unborn baby in controversial circumstances this year at Parirenyatwa Group of Hospitals, has been forwarded to the Medical and Dental Practitioners Council and Nurses Council of Zimbabwe for further investigations. This comes as Munyono's family has dismissed PG Urch's preliminary investigations and maintained that her death and that of her unborn child were a result of staff negligence, not equipment or staff strategies, as claimed by the hospital. In a statement yesterday, PGH said it had carried out detailed investigations on Munyono's death, which showed that the hospital needed to strengthen its systems and have adequate equipment. And I quote, "The damage of Sharon Munyono remains highly unfortunate. The hospital has already started implementing the team's recommendations to enhance patient safety and timelines of service in Buyanyanda Maternity Hospital. Appropriate action will be taken on staff members involved in the case," read part of the statement from the hospital. So our condolences to the Munyono family, and may Sharon and her baby rest in peace. Do you want to comment on that one?
I feel like if you comment on this, you'd come off as a little bit insensitive, so just to be safe, because we actually don't know what happened, and of course, I can't,
because the hospital is simply saying that it was shortage of staff and equipment and everything, but the Munyonos believe that it was just negligence on the part of the hospital staff. So, but then we say it's a very sad incident indeed, and no one family would want to lose a child and the mother, because most people, once they get to the maternity ward, what they're expecting are congratulatory messages and smiles. And once again, we say, may Sharon and her baby rest in peace.
Okay, I'm still on the Daily News. Air resumes SA flights. And that story reads, Zimbabwe's national airline said yesterday it had resumed flights to South Africa after a halt last week when the neighboring country's state-run airports management firm barred the airline over unpaid fees. Air Zimbabwe's sole aircraft in operation was grounded last week by airport company South Africa, which said the airline had failed to pay landing and parking fees, passenger service charges, and undisclosed amounts towards clearing its arrears. So basically, this was all debt. They just grounded the plane because of debt. Parking fees, landing fees, passenger service charges. It's ridiculous.
And once again, some people who had booked with Air Zimbabwe were actually inconvenienced. And Emmanuel is saying that's a good move. If someone dies, enough is enough. And Lila James here is pretty mad, and I'm sure she didn't get the context of our comments. Like Nicole said, she said she will not comment on the issue for fear of, in a way, being insensitive to the families. But let's just focus on the facts that we have from the newspaper, and maybe for the developments, if it gets to the court or whatever the Medical Association Disciplinary Council has to say, then we'll be giving you the details. Our apologies, Lila James, but we did not say, maybe you were offended by something that we said, but we were not actually making a joke of the death. Like we said, we even paid condolences to the family. And Emmanuel is saying the ship is truly sinking. Finance Ministry officials face arrest. And this is running in the Daily News. Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, PAC, has given 3 Finance Ministry officials an ultimatum to appear before it on Friday, November 15, or face arrest for contempt after they did not show up yesterday. MDC MP for Harare East Tendai BT, which is the park, told journalists after the officials no-show that the committee had particularly summoned the ministry's Director of Budget, Zvinechimwe Churu, Director of Capital Expenditure, Fidelis Ngorora, and the Accountant General, whose name could not be established, to shed more light to some documents. But they previously made available to the committee, which raised more questions than answers. So they've defaulted on the request by the committee for them to attend the meeting, so they're actually facing arrest because of that. When money is involved, it's always a story.
Well, the finance committee, parliamentary committee, doesn't play when it comes to, bringing to book and questioning people with regards to money. Okay, can we please have another story? Okay, so moving on to the news day, BCC to intensify water rationing. And that story reads, Bulawayo City Council has extended its water rationing period beyond the published schedule in some parts of the city due to reduced electricity supply to pump stations. Town Clerk Christopher Dube said the local authority yesterday started closing water supplies to areas supplied by Magwegwe, Criterion and Tuli reservoirs outside the normal water rationing program in a bid to normalize the reservoirs. So, and I quote, the city of Bulawayo would like to advise stakeholders and the residents that water supplies have been closed for areas supplied by the Magwegwe, Criterion and the Tuli reservoirs outside the normal water rationing program in a bid to normalize the reservoirs, Dube said.
So there are two things involved. There's the depletion of the reservoirs, and then there's also the electricity problem.
Yes.
So hopefully people will have enough water as despite it being rationed. And I'm sure many people would want to actually drill bores and everything. But also considering that Bulawayo is a pretty dry region, we never know. Hopefully it rains and people get more water. Reduce military expenditure, government told, was still on the news day. An economist has said Zimbabwe should cut military expenditure and channel the resources towards the revival of the health sector and economy. Prosper Chitambara made the remarks yesterday in Mutare at the Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, LEDRI's engagement workshop with local scribes. And I quote, "We can do without a military. Let's reduce the personnel in the army because we're not under any threat, but channel more resources to health and social services. For example, Japan has channeled more resources to health and social services than to the army," he said.
So that is Prosper's view right there. And can we please have another story? Okay, so that was all that we had for you today. And so please kindly join us again tomorrow as we bring you more in our local press. Do you have anything?
Nothing else from our comment section. Thank you very much to the people who are watching us on our Facebook and also our YouTube platform. Do get in touch with us again tomorrow morning. So from Nicole Madziwa and myself and the crew behind the scenes, we say see you tomorrow and have a marvelous day.